Yeah, I've been putting them since the.
People may feel that they want to keep their questions to themselves or would like to contribute in the chat box. So typing their question in. If you would like, if you feel comfortable asking a question, you can send it directly to Maria Gutierrez and she will be able to make it anonymous. So she will either send it to the chat with your name removed, or she will say it out loud at the end of the presentation. So it is okay if you do not want to type it to everyone in the chat. You may send it just to Maria. Also, any comments out loud will be recorded, and this is going to be uploaded to YouTube. And so we do want to respect everyone's privacy, to not use names, and to keep this, again, be as sensitive to people's needs as possible. So we will have time at the end for questions. So if you want to put things in the chat or hold your questions to the end, we would really appreciate it. All right, so for our next section, we have some online questionnaires that we are hoping you will complete for us. One is a general questionnaire about your views on sexuality and relationship education as a parent or as a provider. And so we would ask you to fill that out. We now have those in the chat box. And at the very end, we will ask you to fill out a questionnaire for Alabama Council on Developmental Disabilities, who are our funders. And so the more questionnaires that show, I mean, even if you don't like it, we would still like to hear your feedback. We want to get to understand what parents and providers are looking for. So you can fill that out, and the better the feedback, or the more feedback we get, the easier it is for us to provide more trainings like this, because people will see that it's important and that y'all are here and care about what we're presenting. And some quick introductions. I am Dr. Christine Drew. Those of you who come every week are probably so tired of hearing about my little speech, but I am an assistant professor at Auburn University, and I work on challenging behavior in adolescents. I help parents through parent coaching, and then I also am interested in sexuality and relationship education. And I've been lucky enough to work with Dr. Doris Hill and Maria Gutierrez on this great grant. They invited me, so I feel I'm very grateful to them for including me. And Dr. Hill?
Yes, hi everybody. Good to see you again. I'm Dr. Doris Hill. I am an associate research professor at Auburn University. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst, and I teach the course sequence along with Dr. Drew for the BCBA and the special ed program. And I'm the director of the Regional Autism Network. And now I'm going to kick it over to Maria.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maria Gutierrez. I am the family navigator for the Regional Autism Network. We are region number 4, and we cover 20 counties. And I am so excited to see so many people. And I was super excited looking at the registration list that we have people from out of state and from Mexico. So thank you for joining us. And I know that we have some professionals, principals, and teachers, and vocational rehabilitation, and parents. So we are so excited that you guys are here. And we are super excited that this topic is one of the parents have been asking for, but we were happy to find these two speakers, Ms. Laura, that will be presenting this time, and Ms. Catherine will be presenting the following one on the 22nd. And so we hope that you guys get to find this information valuable and that you could use it in your family or with the families that you serve. Ms. Laura?
Wow, that was quick. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Holland Pace, and I am a health and wellness educator. And I've been working in the field of health and wellness for about 25 years. I'm currently involved in a sexual health certificate program at the University of Michigan that I'm finishing up for a national certification as a sexuality educator. And so my background has been, I would say, over the last 15 years, primarily working with children, teens, and young adults that have intellectual and developmental disabilities, primarily around sensory integration. So, helping them to go through their day with more ease, feeling more comfortable in their bodies, helping them to be more focused and have attention for school. I work with all kinds of people. And about 5 years ago, my focus shifted to primarily sexuality education. And so the story behind that is that I have next week, my son will be 20 years old, and he has an intellectual and developmental disability. And I was seeking some type of sexuality education curriculum for him for years. And I was asking the school district, what kind of supports they could provide for him around that. And he's a person who has a high level of need, and he is considered nonverbal and uses sign language and uses an iPad to communicate. So there were a lot of barriers for him in how he was going to receive this information. So the long and short story of it is that I heard about Elevate Us training, and I participated in their training, and I thought it was excellent. And my son's school district hired an agency to provide sexuality education to him. And the agency couldn't find anyone to provide the education, so they hired me. And I became my son's first sexuality educator. And it's been an amazing experience for me. And I will share lots of stories tonight. As an educator, working with people that are teens and young adults in sexuality education. But I think the more important part of this, for me at least, is that I live it. I'm a parent, and I'm a parent of a young adult who has a lot of questions and a lot of needs. And I have to figure out how to share this information that is so valuable with him in a way that he understands. So tonight, as I go through the presentation, I want everyone here to know that I'm not just an educator with a background in sexuality education. I'm also the mom of a kiddo that I truly believe needs to learn this. And I've had some bumps along the way, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, and I have to slow down and remember that even though I work in this field, this is my kid, and I have to figure out how to share the information with him in a way that he's going to understand it, and that I don't have to share it all in one conversation, which I'll repeat over and over, and I don't need to know all the answers. So tonight, my hope is that everyone that's here feels a little more comfortable in this conversation, that they feel like they've gotten a little more information, and that they feel like they can go into this and at least start the conversation with their children and young adults. So that is my hope tonight for everybody, and that we also have some fun together, because I like to have fun. So that's me, and I'll share more when we get into the presentation.
Okay, I'm going to stop my share and you can share your screen now.
Okay. Bear with me because I have two things going here. Desktop 2.
They've put up with my screen sharing skills for
I think it worked.
A year and a half. So
I think it worked. And I'm going to share that. And let's see. Oh, no, that's not what I want to do. Slideshow it. Okay. Do you see that? Okay. Okay, so you see the talking with your kids, right? Yay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We do.
Okay, fantastic. And again, I just want to say, if anyone needs me to slow down, please let the interpreters know, or you can use the hand raise function. That is, you should have that on your bar, so that you can do, it says reactions, and you can do the hand raise, or you can raise your hand, or you can use the chat, or you can unmute. Okay, so if anybody wants me to slow down or explain something a little more, please feel free to raise a hand and let me know that, especially if I need to slow down. Okay, because I am a New Yorker and I talk fast. All right, so let's get started. So tonight we're going to be talking with your kids about sexuality. And this presentation was developed by Elevatus Training. So we will be using their slides tonight. And I know that Maria already mentioned this. There will be handouts that you'll receive also. And I'll show them to you as we go through the presentation, that will kind of take all of this and put it into something that you can use. So please don't feel like you need to be writing down notes. You're going to get everything that you need in the handouts afterwards. So hopefully you can just pay attention. And if you want to put your video on, that's great. And if you don't, that's okay too. Okay. Oops. Hang on here. Okay. So why are we having this conversation, right? And why do we think that our kids need to learn about sexuality? So mainly, there is very little to no sexuality education available in public school districts for people who have an intellectual or developmental disability. There is sexuality education in the general ed curriculum, but there's rarely, if any, appropriate sexuality education for people with disabilities. Teaching about sexuality also helps us kind of challenge any unhealthy messages that our kids might be receiving within our own culture or within our own community. Right? It also normalizes the topic so that it makes it something that's not taboo or totally uncomfortable. It's something that we can actually start to talk about. When we talk to our kids about this topic, it shows that you're open, that you're interested. It also gives us as parents opportunities to express our values, our wants, our cultural beliefs. You know, as an educator, my job is to present information that's medically accurate. Right? As a parent, I also share that, but I surround it with my beliefs and my culture and my religion with my children. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to do that in a school or with my clients, but with my own children, it's very appropriate to also say, and in our culture, this is what we believe or what I believe. And then it also gives you an opportunity to talk about that, right? And it increases the sexual health of our young people and can reduce sexual abuse, which is something that I will talk about later. Sometimes when I start this presentation, people think I'm going to be talking about sexual acts. I am not going to be doing that. I'm talking about sexual health. And sexual health is more than one particular sexual act that we might be thinking about. Right? Sexual health is feeling good about ourselves, feeling good about our bodies, understanding how our bodies work, what's the point of how our bodies do certain things, right? It's about our self-esteem and our worth. It's about feeling good about how you identify in your gender, right? And this has come up sort of in the translation. I might use the word male or female or transgender or non-binary, right? So these are all kinds of words, you may have heard these terms in ways that people identify their gender, right? And then there's sexual orientation, which is separate from gender. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later as well. So it's about feeling good about how we identify our gender and our sexual orientation, right? It's about having relationships that are positive and not being exploited. It's about having information so that we can make healthy decisions, because it's very challenging to make a healthy decision about your body if you don't have all the information that you need to make that decision. Right? If you don't know the names of your body parts, you don't know how they work, you don't know about reproduction and how to protect yourself from an infection that you could possibly get. If you don't know those things, then you could be in harm's way, right? So talking about these topics is about safety as well. So having all of the information then helps us to make more informed decisions, right? And then again, like I mentioned, avoiding some of these words. If you don't know what they are, make sure that you raise your hand so you get that. But I'll be talking about something called sexually transmitted infections, right? Or something like an unintended pregnancy, and other challenges that come up, okay? So we're going to talk about sexual health as a whole person, not just one part of a person. Ooh, I see something came up in the chat. Is there something for me in the chat that I need to know? Nope, we're good. Okay. And if I missed something in the chat, Christine or Maria or Dr. Hill, please let me know.
The only thing that's in the chat now is the surveys in English and
Okay.
Spanish.
Fantastic.
So if you all want to go ahead and you can fill them out now, or you can fill them out toward the end, but we appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely leave time at the end for people to ask questions and to fill out surveys. Whenever I do a presentation, I always have group agreements to just remember if people do choose to share that there may be differences of opinion. That's okay. That this is confidential. So if you do share, please do not share the name of the child that you're speaking about. And anything that happens here, even though this is recorded, we want to be really mindful to be as confidential as possible. Okay. And there are no stupid or silly questions. I want questions from people. So please feel comfortable asking any question, because much of this information may be new for you. So I want you to feel comfortable. And like I said before, I definitely want us to have fun tonight. Okay. We're not going to do breakout rooms. So these slides were created for everybody sort of having the same level of need. And that is not this. So because we have people from different countries and speaking different languages, we're going to just stay in this room together. So when it says breakout room, I'm not going to be doing any breakout rooms tonight. I will ask for this, that people may either volunteer to share with the group, or you can use the chat. And I would ask that you please use the chat, and it can be kept confidential, as Maria said. But what I'd like to start have you think about is, what are some of the messages that you received from your parents about sexuality when you were growing up? So what's a message that you got from your mother or a female figure, or your father or a male figure in your life about your own sexuality? And these could be messages that were spoken and actually said to you, or maybe something you just kind of got from them. And so like for instance would be, my mother said, good girls don't. Good girls just don't anything. She didn't even finish the sentence. Or, you need to wait until you're married before you have relations, as they would say back then, with a man. My dad My dad's messages to me were more from a man's point of view. Be careful because boys will say anything to get what they want. And I got a lot of kind of scary messages about, what boys wanted from me and protecting myself from that. So those were some of the messages that I got. And I can see in the chat already. Christine's writing, I was taught that sex is something that we joke about, but not something we talk about seriously. Yeah. And Dr. Hill, my mom gave me a book. Yeah. Sometimes they do that, right? They're just like, here's the book, good luck. And I do see some things coming in Spanish, so I'll wait for the translation. And if anybody in the room wants to unmute, you don't have to share your video if you don't, and they want to unmute and share with us what are some of the primary messages you got. We would love to hear it.
And Maria Gutierrez, do you see the message in chat? I mean, I can try to translate, but it will be very bad.
The comment was, in my house, this was a taboo topic. You cannot talk about it, okay? And an example is we couldn't even talk about your period.
Right. Right. Okay. Oh, this is great. Okay. I won't say people's names. I'll just read so the entire sex talk at 11 consisted of, if anyone ever touches your privates, my gosh, scream, fire, and run. That was it all. Wow. I'll wait for the interpreters to get on the other ones. Often when I have this conversation, most people receive negative messages. So boys are a distraction, focus on school. Okay.
Having sex is bad.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Every once in a while, when I'm speaking to a group, someone had received amazing positive messages from their parents. But typically it's more like this. Also, the message of men are replaceable, count on women and trust them more. Yeah. And so I'm not trying to make people uncomfortable in this. It's really more of an awareness of what kind of messages did we receive from our parents, and what kind of messages do we want to give our kids, right? And the fact that you're all here, I'm going to think you want to give a positive message to your kids, or you wouldn't have come here tonight. And likely our parents received the same negative messages from their parents, or no messages, right? So it's kind of passed down. So now we're going to break that chain a little bit for our own kids. So the next question I have is, why do you think it's difficult for us to talk about sexuality with our kids? And I don't mean if you have other kids at home. I'm talking about our kids that have an intellectual or developmental disability. Why do you think it's difficult to talk about sexuality with our kids? And again, you can put it in the chat, you can unmute. Okay, so I worry I won't teach them correctly for students, absolutely, because they're more literal. Yeah. Communication barriers. Definitely. Mine is nonverbal, and she is really more like a toddler, even though she's 19. It makes me feel embarrassed. Sure. I appreciate everybody really doing this chat. This is fantastic. I want to hear from you. This is for you. So please use the chat. It's great. Yeah, so there's lots of reasons that we might be uncomfortable or make it difficult, right? Like I did the activity before, perhaps of the messages that we received. Maybe we never had any role models to teach us how to do this. Embarrassment, for sure. I mean, I get embarrassed with my own kids at times. I'll go back to the chat. For us, as a young adult who has not had romantic relationships, but is bombarded with info of open-mindedness online, where she spends 95% of the time, she has no idea what she wants or is interested in. So I'm confused as to how to approach. Right. The internet can be a nightmare for us because there's so much information coming at our kids. It's like, where do we start? And how much do we share, or how little, or what's age appropriate, right? Or nobody talked to me. I don't know how to do this. Maybe I don't know the answers to these questions. Or sometimes people are afraid that if they start to talk about sexuality, it will give them ideas, and then they'll start exhibiting behaviors that would be inappropriate. That's usually a very big fear for people. There was one more that came in Spanish. Okay, it makes me feel embarrassed. Yeah, absolutely. And, remember, I do this for a living. So I talk about this all the time. So if I seem comfortable, I am comfortable because I do it a lot. And when I talk to my son who has a disability, I'm very comfortable because he's been in my classes now for 4.5 years. I also have a 17-year-old daughter who does not want to talk to me about this ever and thinks that the fact that I do this is, as she says, cringy. It makes her very uncomfortable. So even if you want to have the conversation, your kids might not. So, I don't really understand what my son is going through enough to explain sometimes because I was born female. Yeah. I also have a lot of moms that come into these groups and they have boys. And it's like, I'm supposed to talk to my son about this. And then I have dads that come in and say, I'm supposed to talk to my daughter about this. How do I know what to say? And I am the teacher of my son, even though he has a father. His father's not that comfortable with this conversation and doesn't have the same information that I have. So I'm his go-to, and he'll sign, that my mom's my teacher. So he won't even talk to his dad when his dad wants to talk to me. He's like, no. He signs, mom is my teacher, and that's the sign. And because we're comfortable in it. So, okay. And if more comes up, I'll read it. I started talking about body changes around 8 with my girls, and before each change in their body came, they would know why and what to expect. We also had a special day when each started their periods. Now my daughter is 24 on the autism spectrum and already knows about sex, but it's online info and she's not comfortable discussing. Yeah, got it. I also want to say, we have a mixed group of people, and some people here may be talking to their kids very comfortably at a young age, and others may not. And that's okay. The fact is, you're here right now, and that's amazing, right? You chose to come here to learn and to try to figure this out. And so we can't go back, right? We can only move forward and take new information and use that information. So as a parent, I wish I knew about all of this when my son was younger. I didn't. And so I had to start where I started. So here we are tonight. Okay. Sometimes people come in here and they get overwhelmed or embarrassed. So I just want to clear that up so everybody feels good about what we're doing tonight. So as parents, your role as parents in general, but around this topic is just to give information, right? Listen to your kids. What is it that what are they asking you, right? What do they need around this? Try to model it for them as best you can. And, you're going to show your support by answering their questions to the best of your ability, right? The best of your ability. And you want to make sure that you respond in the most positive way possible. Right? That's it. That's all we can do. Somebody else put in here, one of my school friends' parents knitted a red sweater with the date of her first period on the front. Wow, she was mortified. I would think so. Some people do a cake. I've heard of that. And my daughter said, please don't make me a cake. I was like, I was not going to make a cake, right? Some parents feel like that's empowering, right? And they're like, oh, I want to celebrate you became a woman. And the kid's like, no, I don't want that, right? So we all have those moments. So I'm sure that parent thought she was doing a really cool thing, but the kid didn't, right? And as a parent, I do lots of things that make my kids uncomfortable. So it's kind of part of being a parent, right? Okay. So at the end of this, you're going to get some handouts. And in the handouts are going to be several topics that you could possibly talk to your kids about in sexuality. So I'm not going to give you a whole lesson on human sexual development. It's too much. It would be too much for me. It's too much for everybody. Okay. But when I talk about human sexual development, there are all these different areas that you could possibly talk to your kids about, right? We might talk about what we call biological sex. When you're born, do they look and say, oh, it's a boy, or, oh, it's a girl, right? Or maybe they don't assign a sex. This is new. If this is new information, that's now optional in some states. They might not assign a gender at birth. Okay. We talk about gender assignment, right? So again, do we actually say, oh, they are a boy or they are a girl, right? Again, that's changing in our ever moving, changing so quickly world. So if this is new for you, it's okay, right? It's just new information. And if it's not relevant, then that's okay too, okay? We might talk about how we start to develop our gender identity, right? Do they act like a boy or a girl? So when I was a young child, they used to call me a tomboy. And what that meant is I did not wear dresses. I liked to play in the dirt. I liked what they would consider kind of like boy games. I liked cops and robbers, and I liked action figures. And I always came in the house with skin knees and ripped pants. And my mother didn't know what to do with me. And I was a tomboy. Today, they might say, do you feel female? Do you feel male? Is this child transgender? It might be looked at differently today. There's more conversations around it. So you might hear those terms, but it's also about, in our society or our culture, how we expect boys or girls to act. And that's also changing. So these are conversations you may have with your kids. Development of our values, when we start to really think about, as we're developing sexually, about love, right? And relationships and how we feel. How does our religion impact that? How does our culture impact that? How does our family impact that, right? So all these beliefs that we start to have in our values as part of our sexuality is all part of that normal, healthy human sexual development. Okay. Our attitudes, some of what the comments were, being afraid of boys or protecting yourself, or, like I was saying, like good girls don't. Our attitudes about our bodies, our attitudes about our sexuality. So when we're talking to our kids, it's also what kind of attitudes do we want them to have about their own sexuality, and our values and attitudes might change as we get older, right? As we start to kind of grow into ourselves. Okay. I'm going to pause. Are there any questions right now from anybody? Does anybody need clarification or questions so far? No? Good. Okay. Okay. So, again, I think I just covered this one already. There are so many topics that we can start having conversations around knowledge about our sexuality, the development of those skills. Okay. And what does that even mean, right? Development of skills. It's like information. So when we're young children, this is, let me back up for a second. These slides are going to list interests, concerns, and behaviors of typically developing young children. So as we go through this, you may say, well, my 16-year-old just asked where babies come from, or my 20-year-old still doesn't have a need for privacy. So this is what's typical. It may not be what is happening for your child or young adult. Okay, so I just want to clear that up as we go through. It's just what is typical. Okay, so young children will start to talk about body parts. They may start touching their genitals, or as we would call private parts. They might engage in what we call sex play, sort of, curiosity of what's going on with the boys over there, or what's going on with the girls, what's under the skirt kind of play. Right? They might start to wonder where do babies come from. Right? Also body image, looking at other girls and thinking, well, how come I don't have curves like that? Or boys saying, well, I'm so skinny, or I'm not very tall yet, or I don't have muscles, right? They might start to have more of a need for privacy, closing the door in the bathroom, right? They have no problem barging into the bathroom when you're in the bathroom, but they won't want you in there when they're in there, right? My daughter just sent me a meme of a mom in the bathroom, and outside were 2 kids and like 3 cats and 5 dogs. And it's like every mom's every day, everybody's right there. Like I just want privacy. Somebody put in the chat, my daughter is nonverbal and has an intellectual disability plus autism, and starting to develop into a young girl, and she's concerned that when she starts her period, she won't know how to address it because she has a lot of sensory issues. What's I think the opinion regarding medication to prevent her cycle? That's an excellent question. So I think that these are personal choices, and I would suggest that you take your daughter to a gynecologist for an appointment. and talk about what happens at the gynecologist before you go. Don't just go to the gynecologist. I would actually make sure that you get a great recommendation from your primary care provider, or maybe someone, Dr. Drew might have some resources, but get a resource first for someone who's familiar with people on the autism spectrum, and talk about, you can go there and talk about the consideration for possibly using birth control pills to manage a period. There are opportunities to use birth control pills where you do not get a period, but I would say it's really important that you speak to a medical professional about that, and someone who has some understanding of your needs and your daughter's needs. That's really important. And if they're not the right person, walk out and find somebody who is, because she should be valued and honored for where she is. And also your concerns should be heard. So it might be that you go and speak to the doctor without your daughter first, just to make sure that you're on the same page with that. It's a really good question. And it's a major concern for some parents. So I understand that. Someone asked, how can you address my son's behaviors of touching himself all the time while watching TV? Right. So he's got a lower IQ and is nonverbal, and some suggestions about that. Right. I will address that a little bit later. So if I won't forget, because that's always a very big question. How can I support some of the families I work with, since the topic of sex is taboo in their culture and don't talk about it? And how do we make that more comfortable? Well, I hope that tonight will give you some of those resources. So if I don't answer those questions now, I think I will very soon. And what recommendations do I have for parents who have younger kids who don't really understand? Yeah, definitely. I really think that these questions will be answered in the next half an hour or so. So if they're not, we will definitely go back to these questions. So save those questions. If I don't answer them, ask them again. Okay. And Dr. Drew has some materials to help prepare for appointments. So that's wonderful. And it's really important, right? Like social stories. We use social stories for a lot of things, new things, so that you don't go in and get scared, because it can be scary. It's scary for me to go into these appointments, and nobody told me what to expect. So I can only imagine how scary it would be for someone with a disability who doesn't understand and has sensory issues, and it's a stranger who wants to examine their bodies. So I think it's really, really important that we prepare them for that kind of an appointment. Okay. Right. So again, moving through the interests, concerns, behaviors, this is typical for adolescents. Okay. They start to change, their bodies start changing. And, if you have teens, they stink, right? They go from being beautiful, smell so good, to like, what happened, right? They start to get pimples on their faces. They start to have questions about babies and pregnancy and these things. And you're like, what? They start to express themselves in the way that they dress. And, your daughter comes downstairs with the crop top and the short shorts, and you're like, you are not going out of the house like that. They're expressing themselves in these ways that maybe make you uncomfortable too. Start to be concerned about using contraception, which is a way to prevent pregnancy, or concerns about getting a sexually transmitted infection. Again, that would happen while being sexual with another person. They start to have feelings, thoughts, feelings in their body, tingles and things that are going on. And they may start to engage in masturbation or self-pleasure. Okay. And if you're at this point going, breathe. Yes, Dr. Drew. Right. And maybe your kids don't have these things going on yet. right? Or maybe they had it and you're already past that and you're way past that, okay? I don't know where they're at right now. Okay. And then as they grow older, they might start talking about, again, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, body image, right? Dating, figuring that out, how to communicate, figuring out if they want to have a relationship, what could that look like? This, as parents, this makes our head spin, right? Maybe we think about what it was like when we were their age, and it was scary for us too. And again, then as adults or young adults, thinking about, do I want to be a parent, right? Again, engaging in self-pleasure and talking more about sexual orientation and gender identity. Okay. Same thing. Okay. So again, breathe. So this is another opportunity to use the chat. I'm curious, I'm going to ask first, how is a person with an intellectual or developmental disabilities experience of developing the same as someone without a disability? So I'm talking about sexual development. What do you think is the same for a person with a disability as a person without a disability? What's the same? So I'm seeing in the chat, same bodily changes. Yep. The physical changes may be the same. Anybody else? Same hormonal impact. So maybe the same kind of things happening in their body from hormones. Same, everything except the social skills and discernment with boundaries. Okay. And I'll ask then, what do you think is different? So how is it different for a person with a disability than it is for a person without a disability? What are some of the differences you think in sexual development? Okay, yeah, less peers to date, people to date, having understanding of privacy, that can definitely be different. I'll wait for the translation on that. More vulnerable, may not know where to get information, for sure. Yeah, hygiene may be different. Okay, and hygiene is really about taking care of your body. People don't know that word. Right. So, yes, information for someone whose son has severe autism and needs to be bathed and dressed. Sure. I mean, there's going to be some of our kids may need that level of care for their lives, right? And it's also about how do we protect them in that? So information is going to be really important. And my son still needs some assistance, and I've been working on him doing more for himself and giving him some more privacy. And it can be challenging for sure. So I do understand that. They may be more sheltered. And I'll wait for the next translation, and then I'm going to go onto the slides. And if things come up, I will go back to the chat because I want to keep things going. Oh. Or I just did it. Okay. So some of the things that are the same are typically people are assigned a gender at birth. Okay. Whether you have a disability or not. And those gender roles are reinforced, right? How are we supposed to act when we are male? How are we supposed to act when we are born female? Right? It's the same. Someone wrote, being unable to express themselves because they can't speak and they can't tell what they feel. Oh, for sure. For sure. So again, what's same, right? They have the need for the same information based on their biological age. I'm going to explain that. So your biological age is your actual age. So if you say, well, my son is 15 years old, that's his biological age. And then you might say, but the way that he thinks is more like a 5-year-old. Okay. Often people will think that because a person is 15 years old, but maybe thinks like a 5-year-old, they don't need the same information, but they do. Because what's happening in the 15-year-old body is different than what was happening in their 5-year-old body, and they need the information. They may need it taught in a different way than a typical 15-year-old, but they have the need for the same information based on what's happening in their body at that time. So 2 5-year-olds, one with a disability, one without, the same things are happening in their bodies. So they need to know what that is. That 10, 12, 13-year-old girl who might be getting her period needs to know that information before it happens or as it's happening, right? The 16 to 19, again, the changes in the body are happening for males and females. They have this, they need the information based on what's happening in their bodies, right? We just might need to teach it to them differently. Right? And they have the same feelings as their typical peers. They have the same sexual feelings and needs and drive. Right? And they have the same dreams. They might be saying, I want to have babies. I want to get married. And you're like, what? You can't take care of yourself, but they want it. So we have to know about that, right? It's the same. Okay, another question here that came up about how to show your son how to safely masturbate and clean up. I have resources on that. Dr. Drew may as well. So you'll get resources on that as well. Okay, so what's different? Some of you are already gotten this. There's a lack of basic information. Okay, basic information on sexuality. Okay, people may not talk about this because they think that a person with a disability does not have sexual feelings. Or they may believe that they don't have the need for the information. Why should they need it if they're never going to use the information or never going to have a relationship? They may think that someone that gets this information will start having a behavior, right? They may look at people with disabilities as being children, even if they're 25 years old, right? Go give grandma a kiss. And maybe they don't want to give grandma a kiss, or maybe you have a young adult who hugs and kisses everybody, right? And some of those behaviors may be just acceptable, right? Also, a lot of people with intellectual disabilities don't pick up on social cues. So what's different is they might not realize that masturbating in the living room is not okay because they're not uncomfortable with it. You are. They may not be uncomfortable at all. Right? So that's a real challenge. On how do I address that? And I will talk about that. How do I address that if they don't pick up on those cues? They might have a lack of opportunities for friendships and social opportunities to learn about sexuality. Right? A lot of us learned on the school bus or in the lunchroom or in the locker room or in the corner of the playground, right? Whispering with our friends. And if our kids don't have that opportunity, because a lot of them are surrounded by adults, right? Helping people, teachers, assistants, or aides, or staff of some sort, kids aren't going to talk to them about these things because they have an adult there. So they just don't have the same opportunities. Someone wrote their biggest fear is that she won't be able to experience a close, healthy, and fulfilled romantic relationship. Yeah. I have to say, I definitely had that same experience until I did this training to deliver this type of program. I had a lot of fear, and I don't experience that same fear now because I have a lot of information, and I feel very confident that my son could have a healthy romantic relationship someday. And he's still in my classes, by the way. He's in a weekly class I have with a group of young men. He insists on it because he wants to learn how to flirt and date. And, and he'd also like for me to find him a girlfriend. So he has a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on me here. So some people let people with disabilities get away with stuff like hugging when they wouldn't do that with somebody else. Yeah, definitely boundaries, right? So should I just ignore my child's exploring her private parts? No. I'm going to give you tools really soon. Let me get through this. I promise. Okay. And get some ladies together for yeah. Well, there are matchmakers. There are, if you watch like Love on the Spectrum, is a great show for like bringing people together. I do that in my practice, and I partner with other organizations to do like speed dating events and speed friending, speed dating. Yes, Dr. Drew and I are going to talk. How can we do that? Yeah. Because they need a lot of support. Can't just throw them out there and go find somebody. No, so, there's also a lack of privacy to explore their sexuality. Sometimes, especially if we're caregivers of our kids, we might not close doors. We might not allow them to lock doors. We might not give them the privacy that they need. So then they start to explore their bodies in other places that they shouldn't. Right? What's different is what I just said. A lot of parents give up or let go of their dreams for their children because they think there's no way they can have this. They worry. They're afraid that they're going to get hurt, or they see them as not being sexual. I was one of those parents, and I am not anymore. I feel very empowered, and my son feels it. And what a wonderful place to be in, to have that shift inside of me to say, do I have fears? Yeah, of course I have fears. And can I support him to have a healthy relationship? I can do that. So that I had to let go of some other dreams that I had, but I don't have to give up on this particular dream. And I don't know what it's going to look like. And that's okay too. What's different is how we teach the topic. Often the topic of sexuality, if it's taught at all, is taught babied down. Like even though, again, we have this 15 or 16-year-old, they teach it like they're 5 years old, and they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't understand, right? Because it's made so like they're so young that they don't understand what's being taught to them. Okay. And they may have a wide range of abilities and limitations, right? So that's different. Okay. Let's get into it. So tips. You may have to initiate the first conversation. Your kid may not be interested at all. So you may have to start the conversation. And it's okay to be embarrassed. It's natural to be embarrassed talking to your children about sex. I get embarrassed. I have a strategy. When I get embarrassed, I say, oh, that's a great question. And I do like this. Really, I'm just holding my mouth closed because I tend to go. So I'm like, that's a great question. Yeah. You know, I really would like a chance to think about that. Can we talk about that a little later? And then I go, and then I go look it up quickly and come back, right? With a resource, a book, a video, something that maybe you learned here tonight, right? So it's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to say, I'm so glad you asked me that question. I'm a little embarrassed. Could you give me a moment to think about an answer? I want to answer it. Just give me a minute, right? Then go take the minute and go, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm back. Okay. Using a private tone. Sometimes we don't. We use a tone that's different with our kids that have a disability than we would with our typical kids. It's like, I have one family and they'll say, it's your time for your private time. And they yell it out. And private time is his time to pleasure his body. And I say, it's not private if you yell it. It's not private. And why are we talking about his private time at the dinner table? Right? So if you're going to have the conversation, talk about it, carve out the time, say, I'd like to talk to you. And let's pick a time that works for us. And maybe we go in your room or my room or somewhere else that's private, right? Giving age appropriate information, not what we think they understand, but what goes along with their age. What would make sense for a 5-year-old? Where do I start? Well, you're not going to start at reproduction. You're going to start at your 5, exploring your body. What's happening in your body? Body parts. What are the names of your body parts? Right? And not the names, the nicknames that we use. You know, we all have those, like, you know, you'll say your pee-pee or your hiney or your boobies, or, you know, we have these words that we use. And that's fine. We're going to keep using them. But they also need to know what those words that we're using in our family, what the medical word is, what the scientific word is. So they need to know that boobies means breasts, right? And your pee-pee is your penis, right? Or it's your vulva, it's your vagina. And maybe these words do not come out of your mouth so well. And maybe you've never said them. And it's really embarrassing. And it can be. So that's why we have books and videos and things that we can say, let's look at this together. And then go, okay. Or practice, right? You can practice it. Right. So there's a question here about when you said age appropriate, how do we do it for the ones who are young adults, but with a lower IQ? It doesn't matter. It's still based on what's happening in their bodies. How we do it, there are so many ways. And I'll speed it up so I get there. There are a lot of ways to break down the information. Right? Even as I'm talking now, there may be some parents saying, I can't believe she just said that word. I never said that word, and I'm not going to say that word. Okay. Okay, that's okay. Right? How am I going to break this down? You might have to use books, pictures, work with a team to build a storyboard, social skills. Like you're so lucky you've got these people here that can say, you're not going to teach all of this to your kid in one session, right? No way. No way. Some of these things are going to have to be broken down so much, and it's going to be okay. I'm a big fan of like storyboards and pictures. Pictures are great. And I don't mean like real pictures of body parts. I mean like cartoon pictures or animated pictures. They're excellent as a means to tell a story about a body. Okay. Using models like TV and soap operas and shows like, oh, look, they're kissing. Like, what do you think is going on there? Or what do you think happens when the lights go out? Like to try to get a little information, right? Try to be consistent, you know, giving the same kind of information. Try not to react. That's the hardest one, especially when they ask those big questions and you're like, one was, and I react, I'm very reactive. So try the strategy. Or great question. Slow it down, right? Right. So somebody discovered pornography, their child discovered pornography, and now thinks that's how sex should be. Yeah, that's a big one, right? And so that's where I would say they're actors, because my son also discovered that. And so we had a conversation and said to him, who's your favorite actor? And he loves the actor Jack Nicholson. So I said, okay, well, let's talk about all the different movies that he's been in. So he was the Joker in Batman, right? And he was in The Shining, and he was like a scary guy in that. And he was in this movie As Good as It Gets, and he played like actually played somebody on the autism spectrum in a romantic relationship. And so we said, see, he's an actor and he plays these different roles, and it's not real. So when you're looking at pornography, it's a movie with actors and it's not real. So it's an opportunity to have a conversation of, that's a movie and those people get paid to do that. And that's not what you should expect with a partner. So that's how I would go with that. Right. And that's a teachable moment, right? Something happens and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to use the moment where my son or daughter is on the couch and they have, they're masturbating in the living room. And I'm going to use that teachable moment to say that that's a private act and this is a public place. And so I understand that you'd like to touch your body and you need to go do that in your room with the door closed. Teachable moment, right? So it's not, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're touching yourself, right? This is not the place. So that's a conversation around public and private. And I might start with a lesson right there of, even though you're in your house, this is a public space because people come in and out. You need to go to your room and close the door, or your bathroom with the door closed, then it's private. So that's a teachable moment, not about masturbation, but about privacy, right? So if you're like, I can't talk about that because that was overwhelming to me, don't talk about it. Just say, that's something that's done in private. And what that means is you need to go into your room and close the door. And you might need a social story around privacy. You might need to create that with pictures. What is privacy? What does that even mean? So I wouldn't even address the masturbation. I would address the privacy issue first, because they clearly know how to masturbate. They just don't know how to do it in a place where there aren't people around. And we want to protect them so that they don't do that in other places, right? It's a real problem. A lot of people have issues with that. It's not what they're doing, it's where they're doing it. So if you can take that out of your head, it's not what they're doing, it's time and place. This is not the right time or place for you to do that. However, in your room later is, some parents say the school bus is coming and they're taking their time. And I'm like, no, that's not the right time. And you have to say, knock, knock, knock. This is not the time for that. We got to go. Right. So it's a time and place conversation. It's a privacy versus, private versus public conversation. That might be easier to have than what they're doing. Okay. Teachable moments, letting them know it's okay to ask. Also find out, what are they asking? What are they actually asking? So if your child says to you, where do babies come from? They usually do this when you're driving too, right? And you're like, right, what? Or when grandma's over and you're having dinner and you're like, not, and grandma's like, what did they say? Right. So it's okay in that moment to say, that's a great question. I'd like to talk to you about that later. Okay, this is not the time to discuss that, but I will talk to you about it later. And then I would ask them, where do you think babies come from? Okay, So this is where the skill comes in. And I just taught a group of teenagers in high school last year, ranging in ages from 14 to 21. And I asked them, where do babies come from? And I gave them several options. One option was the stork. Okay. The stork comes down and drops the baby. The other option was babies are made from kissing. The other option was when sperm meets egg. Okay. So if the interpreters didn't hear that, it's when sperm meets egg. Okay. Those were the three options. The majority of my students chose the stork and kissing. So that gave me an idea of where they were coming from. Okay. So if I ask my 17-year-old daughter, who's typical, where do babies come from? She's like, Mom, I know where babies come from. And I'm like, well, where do babies come from? And she's like, you know, and she actually does know, right? Different conversation with her. You have to know where your starting point is. So if they ask you a question like, where do babies come from? And you say, well, where do you think they come from? And they say the stork, you're not going to be talking about contraception or the use of a condom. You're going to be starting at a very basic level of how two people come together, right? If they say kissing, they're moving towards the right direction, but we don't want them thinking that kissing makes babies, right? So we need to explain to them, no, it's not kissing. There's other things that need to happen because that's really important too, right? And if they say, well, you know, a person with a penis puts it inside a person with a vagina, then you're like, okay, and now I know where I need to go. And it could be a whole range of things that they say to you. But how do you know how to answer the question is find out what they know or what they think they know first. And that is a great way to start, because if they're thinking the stork or kissing and you come in with all this other stuff, they're going to freak out because it's going to be too much information, right? And so people are asking, what if they're nonverbal and doesn't know anything? How do I know where to begin? Should I assume they're not curious? No, I would make no assumptions. Is it harder when they're nonverbal? Sure. My son doesn't read. He doesn't write. He has maybe 10 words that he can say. He uses sign language, and he uses an iPad with icons that he can tell me more. And I use a lot of visuals. Visuals are great. So for people whose kiddos are nonverbal or less verbal, or they're verbal, but they still don't know if they know, visuals are awesome. Can you point to the breasts? Can you point to the penis? Can you show me on here what you think these body parts are? Right. And again, Dr. Drew has some of those resources, and I'll be sharing more resources. I think we're going to be sharing a lot of resources. So you're going to have that with some direction on how to do that. Okay. And trying your best to answer using the scientifically, medically accurate terminology. So you don't want to do that exercise and say, where's the pee-pee, right? I know it's so hard. In the beginning, it could be so hard because maybe in our culture, this was not something that we talked about, right? And I'll give you a, for instance, when my son was little, he, I guess, was touching himself or scratching himself. And my mother-in-law yelled, oh, he's touching his birdie, like a bird. And I said, we don't say words like birdie. And she said, well, what would you call it? And I said, well, I would call it his penis. And she screamed. And she said, why would you say that? And I said, well, because he has a lot of things going on, and I don't want him to think that he's got a bird in his pants, because that would actually scare him. Right? Yeah. And he would, because I used the correct terms right from the beginning. So I normalized it by saying, this is not the place to touch your penis. Or is there a problem? And he was like, oh. And let's say, for instance, we teach the word birdie. And then your kid is in school and says, oh, Johnny touched my birdie. And the teacher says, oh, that's so nice. You have a pet bird? Or are they really saying Johnny touched a private part that shouldn't have been touched? Right? So we have to be so mindful of teaching body parts. If you don't know where to start with body parts. What are the names of my body parts? What's the function of my body parts? Right? What do they do? And how do I take care of them? That's a great basis. And you can do that with people who are less verbal through pictures. Pictures are excellent, right? And even if they can't say it, they could point to it. And you may have to teach it several times for them to get it.
And I
Okay?
just have a
Yeah.
thought is, once you teach body parts, it can also help you in other routines. So if you teach body parts, then when it's time to teach them to shower by themselves,
Yes.
or to use the bathroom by themselves, you can say, we're wiping our penis with the toilet paper, and they know what the penis is.
Right.
Otherwise, you're having to show them, which is more difficult. And so once they have that vocabulary, it makes it easier to teach other things later.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. Absolutely. And again, for those of you who this is very unfamiliar territory, this is maybe just scary. Maybe you're not comfortable even talking about your own bodies. I have many, many friends who find this conversation so uncomfortable. So we practice. If you're a mom and you have a son, you've got to learn how to say the word penis. Go sit with yourself and just say it over and over and over until it just doesn't sound like anything anymore. And scrotum and testicles, you've got to learn how to say it. I know you're like, I don't want to say it. I got it. But if they don't know it and you have to teach it, you have to find a way to normalize it so that you can teach them about something that is just part of their body. We can say nose and eyes and ears, but we can't say breasts and vulva and penis. Why not? It's like, oh no, we shouldn't say that. It's bad or it's dirty, but it's not dirty. It's your body. It's your body. And our bodies are amazing. And because women have breasts, they can feed a child, right? And it's also part of their sexuality, right? And because we have a vagina, we can birth a baby. It's important, and we have a menstrual cycle. And we can also experience pleasure there. And because a person with a penis has a penis, right? They use that to urinate, and they might get an erection, and it feels good, and they could also possibly make a baby with another person, right? So there's all these things of like, but what comes out of my penis? Well, that came from, your scrotum or your testicles. Like, it's important that they understand, like, what does my body do? What is this stuff that came out of me? Why is it coming out of me? It could be scary. So it's getting comfortable around some of this conversation, and I'm comfortable with it. Maybe some of you are, maybe some of you aren't. And that's why we're going to give you a lot of resources so that you can become more comfortable. But practicing saying the word just to yourself and getting the giggles out, because you will, is good. And your face is going to turn red, and it's going to be challenging, and it's going to be okay. Right. And so in Mexico, it's very difficult even to talk about the names of body parts and the genitals, because they prefer to use very rude words or double meaning words. Yeah. So here we would call that slang words. and there's lots of them. And I do an exercise actually of what are all of the slang words that we can come up with for this body part, and I'll like point to it, right? And so it's amazing how many slang words there are, and they don't know the medically accurate name, right? And it's not to say that they can't still use those words, but they should know the medically accurate word, because if they go to the doctor, you don't want them to say, I got kicked in my sack, right? Which is a slang here for scrotum, right? You want them to be able to say, I was playing, soccer and I got hit with a ball and, and my scrotum is swollen. Okay. No big deal. Or this fluid came out of my penis and I don't know if that's good or not. Right. Or, for those people who have a vagina, like red, I'm bleeding out of my vagina. Like, what am I going to, is that okay? Yeah. We have to let them know. Or maybe I have some other fluid that's coming out. Is that normal? Right. So yes, it can be really hard. And the best way to do it is to start right. Like, is it itchy? Is there an infection? We have to start teaching them so that they can protect themselves. Right. Okay. I'll get to that in a second. So again, you're going to get this in your handouts, but there's ways that we can answer questions that make it more comfortable for us. Right. Okay. So it can be answer the question, like, what is it? Physically, like what is it actually? You can answer it in a more social way, or you can answer it more in an emotional way. So for instance, if your kid comes to you and says, what is a condom? You choose first. What's the easiest way to answer? You might say, well, it's something that people use that protects them, which will lead to other questions. So be ready, because then they're going to say, well, protects them from what? Right? Okay. You might say something like, well, when people use them, they feel really good about that because they know that they're taking care of themselves and their partner. And then you breathe. Or you might just say, well, it's kind of like a rubber sock and it covers the penis. Yeah. So there's these different ways that we can answer any question. Doesn't matter what it is. Right? Answer what it actually is, bring in something social about it, or the emotional aspect, right? Okay. You might say, sometimes people don't like to use condoms because they don't think it's going to feel good. And it's really important that they use a condom so that they don't get an infection, or so that they don't have a baby when they're not ready to have one yet. Right? It's another way to answer it. Okay. Somebody asked about, is it better for them to have a pediatrician that's their same sex? I think it's a personal preference. My son's doctor is our family doctor. She happens to be female. He's had her for many, many years, and he's incredibly comfortable with her. And if a male doctor comes in the room, he wants no part of it. So I think that it's really about what's your personal preference, and also asking your child what they want, right? Because they might say, well, now that I'm getting older, I would prefer to have a female doctor. Or they might say, I don't want that lady to touch my private parts. I'd rather have a male doctor. Ask them. Okay. I'm not going to do this to you. Okay. Because there's too many things here. So the other thing is behaviors. A lot of people are asking about that. And we have to sort of decide, what do I do, right? Is it better to ignore it? If we can. And then you might name it. Like, for instance, I see that you're touching yourself on the couch, right? And then finding out what's going on. Like, is there something wrong? Like maybe they have an itch or they're just touching themselves just because, is there something going on? Is everything okay? What message do you want to give? Give the messages by responding very simply, right? And then encourage them to respond or ask you questions. So again, like you see your child engaging in a behavior that is inappropriate in that time or place, and naming it can be helpful, right? Like I see that you're doing that, and remember we talked about we do that in a private place, and you're in the living room, so you need to go to the living room or go to your bedroom for that. Okay. You're going to get a lot of this in the handouts. So I'm going to skip this because it's very, very wordy. Okay. And I'm going to actually stop my screen share so I can look at all of your amazing faces or not. And I want to go back to some of the questions that came up. A lot of people, go ahead.
And really quickly, I want to congratulate all of the parents and providers who are here and who made it through the whole presentation and heard the words penis and vulva and didn't say end meeting. I'm leaving.
Yes. Yay. I want to thank you too.
You deserve a round of applause. Y'all have done amazing, and we congratulate you on sticking with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad that you said that. And yes, it's a lot, right? It can be very overwhelming and scary. And it's like, where do I begin? How do I do this? How do I do this? And you just start where you start, wherever you think. If your child is asking questions, that's where you start. If they're not asking questions, pick the thing that you're most comfortable talking about. You don't have to go to, I'm going to teach you all about your body parts. If you're like, eek, maybe you don't know the names of your body parts. That's completely not only possible, but probable, right? So you may need to go learn the names of your body parts to teach body parts. So you will get a list of resources after this, and videos and books and things that you can use. I suggest that you get them. Perhaps even, you all, if you don't have them already, Dr. Drew could get some resources for you that you could, photocopy and share with you and help you with storyboards and different kinds of things, right? So you're not on your own here. It's not like, oh, off you go and good luck. No, I'm going to provide you with lots of resources. Maybe you want to just talk about something that's easy, like a dating experience that was fun, or maybe when you met their father or their mother and what that felt like, or what it was like to flirt, or the first dance you went to, right? Things like that. Start with something that is easier for you to talk about and then go from there, right? So you can kind of decide where to start. If you have a teenager or coming into teenage, around that 10 to 12-year-old, you're going to want to talk about a menstrual cycle and getting a period. You're going to want to make sure they have information about getting erections so that they know what to do and that that's normal and healthy, and not to be embarrassed, but what to do about it. Right? Like, you don't just walk around with it. You might need to hold your book bag in front of you walking down the hallway, or go excuse yourself and go to the bathroom, but that it's normal and healthy. Is there, oh, I had something. I thought there was a question. So, those are those circumstances where there's information that they need, and then you can figure out how to give them that information. Again, in the resources, I'm going to share an amazing resource. I actually want to type it in. I'm going to type it into everyone. It's called amaze.org. I believe they have some Spanish translation available. I have to double check, but amaze.org. It's for parents, educators, your kids. I use it all the time, and it has they're basically animated videos ranging from like maybe 3 minutes to 5 or 6 minutes on everything: body parts, puberty, menstruation, intercourse, using a condom. Yep.
I've used the video on how to use a condom before.
Okay. Everything. And if you're going to watch these videos with your kids, you should watch it first so you know what's going to happen. Okay. Don't watch it with them for the first time. And then you're like, what? And then, yeah. They're excellent videos. And that's a great way to sit down kind of side by side and not have to make eye contact. Right. And just go, we're going to watch this video, and it starts the conversation, right? Like, what did you think about that video? Do you have any questions about it? Sometimes they'll grab and they want to watch all the videos. No, we're going to watch one video. Take it away. But that's a great way to start, to see, like, they might say, but that, I didn't understand that. Now you know a little more about what they know or don't. And they might say, I know all about that. Oh, you do? What do you know about it? Or they don't know anything about it. It can be helpful. And it's a great resource for you all to learn about your own bodies, so then you can teach them. Okay. Questions? Can you recommend any books? Yes, absolutely. There are a whole bunch of books that are going to be coming, recommendations that I will be sharing with the team here, and they're going to be emailing it out to you. So there are lots of books. I'm a big fan. And record. Oh, so that was Maria. Yes, Maria, I have books for you. A list. Books and videos.
Okay, well, just real quick while we're asking questions, Maria, do you think you could put the links, or Christine, the links in the chat again for the surveys? And Alabama Council on Developmental Disabilities also has a survey. So we'll have 2 different surveys, the one from us, and then the one from ACDD that will be in the chat. And while we're asking questions, you can go ahead and fill those out. So I appreciate that.
For those of you, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. You're good. I just wanted to get that started.
Absolutely. I'm glad you did that. For anyone who's not going to stay till the end, and the end meaning like all the questions, I want to thank everybody so much for participating, for being so brave to come here and listen and learn, and even when it's uncomfortable. And I'm sure I said lots of things that you felt uncomfortable. And maybe you're thinking a lot, what do I do? And I promise that the resources that you're going to get, the handouts, will be very helpful. And you have these incredible professionals here that will also help you. You're not alone. And you're going to get additional resources. So you're going to get more than you ever had coming in here. And again, to echo on Dr. Drew, it's amazing when the numbers are still high at the end, because people do leave. They get scared. It's a lot. It's a whole lot. And I, as a parent, I understand how overwhelming it can be to even think about this. And I do what I do because learning how to talk to my son about his sexual health changed our relationship for the better. He now really does want to have a girlfriend. He feels comfortable talking to me about it, He feels comfortable signing and communicating with me in a way that he can communicate. He wants the information. I feel pretty confident that if he does have a girlfriend, that he'll want more information from me and that I'll do my very best to support him. So that's the whole part of it, right? Is like, if you say, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, but I really want to make sure you get the information. Now your kids are like, wait a second, like maybe I do have a question for you. And maybe they don't have it today. They might have it a year from now or 5 years from now, but they're going to say, my mom or dad sat down with me and said, I can ask them any question. And now I have one. And so you're just opening that possibility of, you can come to me because I love you and you can trust me. And I may not know the answer, but I'll get it for you. Right? I'll get that book, or we'll watch the video, or I'm going to reach out to these amazing people who did this presentation, and I'm going to ask them the question so that I can give you the answer. So you don't have to have, please get, you don't have to have all the answers, right? You just have to have the willingness to be in the conversation. That's it. Show up as you do, because you all showed up here because you wanted information. So this is a group of parents who are rock stars because you're here. And I don't know how many people got the invitation, but you're the ones that showed up, right? So that's the first step is, okay, I'm here, taking deep breaths, blushing, not putting on my video, going, if she says the word penis one more time, my head is going to blow off. And I say it because the more I say it, the more comfortable I'm saying it, right? And I just keep saying it because I have to get comfortable, so that when I talk to your kids, I'm not like, oh, right? Because they need me to be able to talk to them and feel heard and feel understood and connect to them, so that they feel great about their bodies, so they feel great about who they are and who they're becoming and what they want and what they need, right? That's what it's all about. So you can share so much of who you are with your kids in these conversations that could be really beautiful and not uncomfortable and scary. Just the butterflies you felt with the first kiss you got, right? Or the first handhold, those kinds of conversations, that could be so lovely. So it doesn't have to be about sex, it could be about that first tingly feeling you had in your body and what that felt like, right? That's another way to do this. There's lots of ways to do it. Yeah.
And just really quickly, so I teach a sex ed class, sexuality and relationship education class at Auburn University to college students with intellectual disabilities.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very cool. I love it. But I always tell them, and this is those of you who know me well, who from all these presentations, I tell the truth.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
My students know that I will always tell them the truth. I will not lie to them. I will not tell them things for my own benefit. I will tell them the truth. Now, I'm not a parent, so I have a different role, but because they know I'm going to tell them the truth, they have confidence in my answers. And so they are more willing to ask me the hard questions because I have shown them over time that I will be truthful. And all it takes is one lie for all that I've told them before for them to think, oh, did she lie about that too? Was she lying when she told me that I need to use a condom because she lied about this other thing? So I am incredibly careful to always tell my students the truth, even when and I don't get uncomfortable very often, but sometimes it makes me uncomfortable, but I tell them the truth anyway, because I want them to trust me. And a child trusting a parent is even more important than a child trusting me or a young adult trusting me. So I take that very seriously, of always being truthful.
Thank you. And for sure, I think it's, we're going to do the best that we can do, right? If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know. I never learned that. Or, growing up, we didn't talk about these things. We didn't talk about it. I'll tell you all something funny before we end. I did one of these talks in my private practice, and I invited my parents to join. My dad is 88. My stepmother's 80 years old. I wanted my dad to know what I did. And when we had the messages in the beginning, when I asked you all what messages you received, my father raised his hand. This was last year. And I thought, oh gosh. And he unmuted and he said, it's amazing to me that my daughter, meaning me, is here talking to all of you people, this is what he said, about sex. I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I died. And he said, because I don't think I ever talked to her about this stuff. So I don't know how she learned all of this. And I was like, oh, please stop talking. Please stop talking. It was,
So you're saying your parents can still embarrass you when they're 8 years old?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I was like, mute, right? And so, and my dad said afterwards, I'm so proud of you. Look what you're doing. Look what you're doing. This is amazing. And I still don't know how you learned all this stuff. Right? So he got that he didn't teach me. I learned the hard way, right? But for my son, he doesn't have the same opportunities that I had to go seek out the information. And the internet is filled with too much information and a lot of misinformation. And so what we don't want to do is say, here's the computer, go look up everything you want on sex. No, we want to guide them and say, this is a website that you can look at. A maze is good. You can learn here. Here's a book that would be helpful for you. Nobody gave me anything, right? So you're not alone in that. My parents didn't talk to me. I had to get information so that I could talk to my kids. Then I had to get help from professionals to help me break it down into smaller pieces for my son and the other people that I work with. And I keep using those resources. So Dr. Drew and I will be exchanging lots of resources because everybody learns in a different way. So we have to figure out, like, what do they need to learn? How are we going to teach it? And what information do we need, right? And once you figure that out, then you just take the first step and it gets a lot easier. A lot easier.
Laura, real fast, they were asking for your contact information. So I did a quick Google search. So I got your Facebook and your website, and then I linked to Elevatus.
Okay,
so
great.
In the chat, parents, I have put some websites, and Maria, I believe, is going to send out an email. Maria Gutierrez was going to send out an email, so we can include that as well. So you can look up Miss Laura's information once we are finished.
Before we close, I just kind of wanted to say thank you to Miss Baker and Miss Luciano for being our Spanish interpreters from Master Access Solutions. They always do such a wonderful job. And to Miss Dew and Miss Joe from AKEEP, the Alabama Korean Education and Economic Partnership, because they have been great as well, very positive, and they're been part of our team for the last year or so, year and a half now. And to you, Miss Laura Holland Pace, we appreciate you being here. And lastly, from my part, and then I'll mute myself again, is I just wanted to remind you that the 22nd of February, Tuesday at 10 a.m., Catherine McLaughlin will do this talk Again, so you'll probably hear it in a little bit differently from a different speaker because everybody's a little bit differently, but we certainly appreciate everything you've done tonight. And now I'm going to mute myself and you can finish up.
And I also, thank you, Dr. Hill. I also want to congratulate our parents for attending and for staying. And I hope that you guys have learned something new, because especially for some of us, okay, we get to think that our children are going to remain children forever and that they have no sexual desire. So it is so important that we continue to learn. Okay, there are tons of books, videos, and these are amazing resources that we'll be sending. And also, thank you to our professionals that stick around, because I know that you guys are going to be the ones making those changes and helping those families learn along. Thank you to the people that join us from Mexico. I know that sometimes there's not a lot of access to resources, so I hope that you find this presentation valuable for you. And we'll be sending the PDF document in English and Spanish along with all the other resources. And I just want to add something else, that if you could please really complete the surveys, that will help us a lot with the grant, so that we know if we are doing a good job, and also to send it to ACDD so that there could be more programs like this in the future. And Ms. Laura, thank you, you rock it. And we hope that we'll be getting your emails and information from your group, and we'll be sharing them with professionals and parents for them to participate. Dr. Drew?
That's it. I'm just really thankful. Thanks for, I know that I started this conversation by saying I want to get this training going, and I appreciate y'all putting up with the things I'm interested in and letting me